The last few years have been rough. Very few indie games have broken through, and the only ones I can think of off the top of my head is Stardew Valley, a game where your granddad dies and you're forced to take on a shitty shack in the middle of nowhere and eventually marry someone, despite being almost completely non-verbal. Even excellent indie game devs have been absolutely mudded by the current developers' climate. And Among Us, well, Among Us has been this weird golden light that's shined through the darkness. Indie game Jesus, if you will. As the virus that shall not be named has forced us all inside for risk of death, except if you live in LA, we all know that if you have over 100k followers that it is illegal for the virus to enter your body. But as all this has been happening, we've been forced to find other ways to interact with each other, lest we turn out like Tom Hanks in Castaway. Humans are extremely social creatures, and even if you claim to be one of those massive fuck-off nerds that's an introvert, you take MBTI tests for fun, that kind of thing, the truth is, being lonely absolutely sucks. I should know. The word friends hasn't really been a part of my vocabulary since the early 90s. Just kidding. I wasn't born then. But human beings have very weirdly complicated ways of socializing. There will be very few people that you can just continuously talk to without some kind of conversational lubricant. And ironically, the people that you can speak to without using conversational lubricant, you've probably used actual lubricant with, if you know what I'm saying. Before COVID, these lubricants were mainly physical things, like alcohol, movies, food, and if you want to have a really good time, board games. But since COVID, we've had to find alternative ways to do these things in a virtual environment or cope with the long periods of uncomfortable silence when there isn't anything to say to anyone. We all love Zoom calls, am I right, boys? Among Us and games like it are virtual equivalents to board games. Not only that, but I think that they have all the pros of board games but with none of the limitations of them. To further explain this, board games are arguably one of the first forms of games we ever had. I imagine even back in caveman times there were a form of them, although they probably less involved sitting around a table and expressing how much you hate your family, and more involving grabbing a literal piece of wood, calling it a board, and hitting your wife over the head with it. One of the biggest appeals of a board game is the community aspect, and by that I mean watching your friends be idiots and bullying them for it. In Pictionary, for example, no one's brain works the same or views objects in the same way, so the fun part of that game is trying to figure out how another person views the world. Which is difficult because deep down, we are all terrible narcissists. I am the center of this universe in my eyes. The same kind of logic applies in Among Us. You're trying to figure out another person's thought process to figure out if they're lying or not. Or if you're the imposter, you're trying to manipulate the other person into thinking you're innocent. The social aspect of this game is what makes it. However, in a physical game, there are some things that are completely out of your control. The main thing being your senses, what you can hear and see. When you're playing in person, you unfortunately have to see your friends' faces. This is of course unfortunate because we all know I ain't ever seen two pretty best friends. There's not only the sense-based constraints such as hearing and seeing, but also a constraint around the amount of space that you can use when playing a game in real life. You're constrained to however large your house or living room is, unless you want to go out in the street and play it, in which case you might be a bit weird. In an online game, none of these things are issues. You're in a virtual environment, so almost everything you do is completely controllable. The maps can be whatever size you want them to be, and you can control your senses because every single one of them is coming from the small machine underneath your desk that controls your whole life. Among Us in particular is so intelligent with this because it takes the party game concept and applies all the advantages of this virtual environment to it. And this is what I'd say to many developers starting out and trying to conceptualize their ideas. In your genre, in this case party games, find what is lacking and fill the void. Find ways that you can make this video game stand out when compared to its predecessors. After all, computer-based games are the future of entertainment, especially considering that this isn't the first pandemic and probably won't be the last. Many developers seem to develop games completely forgetting that at some point it will hit the market, and while that is a sign of passion, it is a problem with being an indie developer in a capitalist society. Always remember that the games market is extremely competitive, especially as an indie games developer. And if you want to get off the ground, prioritize features that will click with the genre that you're making and take advantage of features that you wouldn't otherwise think of. Among Us's design does this really well, and whilst it took us 2 years to appreciate that, when it blew up massively because its design is tailored towards sharing. Not only that, but it's implemented in a way that's very hard to fault. It's a perfect example of a game meeting market needs at the time of popularity. So now to the reason why I really made this video. I can't compliment anything without an ulterior motive. Oh, I'm a horrible person. But for those of you that don't know, I have been streaming a little on and off recently, granted, on my Twitch. Here's some Among Us highlights. Hello, it's Tay from the future. I'm here to let you know that the past broadcast got deleted. So instead I'm just gonna blatantly advertise my Twitch instead of showing you Among Us gameplay, you know? This video's a shambles. Here's some completely unrelated gameplay. They're just hungry.
No, you.
Yeah, your full netherite's so fucking bad, you asshole.
I'm just gonna drop out. I'm not gonna go to class anymore. I just...
Yes, I'm in labor. Finally, I've given birth. Let's go. My dad? My boyfriend. I want to fuck. I want to fuck. I want to...
Not the staircase.
Fuck.
Jesus.
Choke me like you hate me, but you love me, Loki. Wanna date me when you shag me, ooh woo. Touch me with the lights off and my chains on, baby. I'm not the right one you should wait on.
There you go.
Why?